Hello, hello everybody. I guess I'm live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Looks good. If anybody can hear me, say something. If you can hear me, say something. Hey Nishant, love your trenchant insights. Wow, trenchant. That's a very good word. Thank you. I know you keep doing book recommendations as well. Any books you read in 2025 that have stayed with you? Thanks again for being you. Wow, that's so sweet of you. Thank you, Mr. Sarthak Verma. That's very nice of you. If you can hear me, Mr. Verma, it would be very nice to just know that if I'm audible and clearly, so I can just move forward. And I'll definitely tell you a lot of book recommendations. I do that a lot actually at Thinker's Frequency. I keep referencing everything we read with book recommendations. So it's always a lot of fun. That said, if you can hear me, it'd be really nice to know. So just let me know. Mr. Raju Kumar, thank you so much. Good morning. Yes, I can hear you. So I guess I'm audible. Mr. Sarthak Verma says I'm audible. So I'm audible on LinkedIn and YouTube both. Bum 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 bum. All right, so let's begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our wives, our husbands, our friends, everybody. Not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Things got better, ladies and gentlemen, with Thinker's Frequency. This morning, we continue on our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Like imagine tuning into a fun session of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before you start your day. Well, your imagination just came true. But before we begin, I'd like you to take a sip. I'd like you to follow the tradition. You know the tradition, right? The tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll sip something together. And for the simultaneous sip, all you need is a cup or mug or glass or tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having tea. And here we go. Oh my god, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Let's do that again. My god. Highlight of my day. Dopamine hit. You know, the simultaneous sip says something very important, right? You know what it says, right? What does it say, ladies and gentlemen? It says that you're not alone. We're not alone. We're in this together. So that's simultaneous sip. Moving on, let's go for the first news of the day. China breaking on rare earths a risk to Motown. Now, a lot of people must be new to Thinker's Frequency, but some must be old. And people who have been watching Thinker's Frequency would know that we learned about China's rare earth minerals or blocking of magnets. You remember? I told you that China has been blocking a rare earth magnet. The shipment is stuck at their ports, and that is leading to a life and death situation for the EV play. Because apparently, that rare earth mineral magnet is very necessary for making electric vehicles, the motors, and so on and so forth. So without that rare earth magnet, the entire supply chain of the EV ecosystem in India could come to a grinding halt. And that's what's happening. So people have said, Mr. Bajaj said a few days ago, that if we don't fix this, it could be real big trouble because there's no way to make it. Now, even though this rare earth mineral, this magnet, the import value of it is very low, it's just 300 crores or something. But this 300 crore of mineral could jeopardize the entire EV economy, the EV ecosystem. And let's say, now people might think, okay, it's fine. No, but it's not fine because what happens is, let's say your EV manufacturing has a delay of 15 days. Let's just say 15 days, the entire staff of TVF or TVS or Bajaj, I hope not TVF, or Bajaj or Ola Electric or Ather, they're just sitting on their laps, on their hands essentially, and not being able to make. Just imagine the compounding effect, and the dealers don't have the stock for those 15 days, and the customers defer their purchases. So it leads to cascading effects of these things, screw everything up very, very, in a very big and unfathomable way. And now the government is trying to step in and just asking those ports to solve those problems and get that rare earth mineral. But something is not happening. It's been 7 days since this is happening. This has been happening, but it has not been cleared yet. So I guess it's just China's way of saying something, right? To have their rare earth mineral, a small magnet shipment stuck at their ports, it says something. It says that we complete you. Instead of you complete me and Jerry Maguire, they want to say we complete you. It's a negotiating tactic, is what I look at it, is how I look at it. So it's a very interesting play, and let's see when we are able to solve that. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency will know first thing right before they start the day. Speaking of starting days and whatnot, I had a very interesting encounter with Mr. Sabir Bhatia. So I had written a post about Mr. Sabir Bhatia's statements regarding GDP's computation, the calculation of Indian GDP. So if you guys remember, the post didn't go viral or anything. It was a fairly lukewarm response kind of a post. However, in that post, I had very categorically and very methodically mentioned how Mr. Sabir Bhatia was wrong about Indian GDP calculation. So, quick context to all of you: Mr. Bhatia has been going viral on the internet for saying that Indian GDP calculation is fraudulent. It's a farce. And how it's a farce, he said, and I quote, that the way they calculate GDP is that if I give you $1,000 and you give me $1,000 back, they count it as $2,000 contribution in GDP. That's what he said in his interview in a dumb podcast, uh, which had a lot of shock value for me because uh, you don't expect something like this coming from somebody like Sabir Bhatia sir, right? He's huge. $400 million acquired by Microsoft in 1998. That's no small deal, right? That's no small deal. So I was like, and what I saw was that people were actually agreeing with what he was saying. That yes, yes, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's weird. So what I did was I wrote a post about GDP calculation, the method of it. I said why what Mr. Bhatia is saying is absolutely wrong. So the points I mentioned were very factual. That GDP calculation doesn't happen basis transactions, you know, because GDP calculation isn't a new activity for humankind. We've been calculating GDPs since time immemorial. And you can't expect somebody to not have come up with said, oh, wait, man, these duplicate transaction is a problem. We should discount it. That happened. So the way GDP is calculated is there's NSO, which is a part of MOSPI, Ministry of Statistical and Program Implementation, or something like that. And the data is source triangulated, right? GST, MCA, IIP, uh, labor survey, and so on and so forth. So a lot of this data gets source triangulated, and everything is dependent on each other, right? Everything is linked with each other. So different bodies give different data, and then everything gets triangulated, and then this data is put forward, and then it's audited by CAG first internally. That's Indian Comptroller and Auditor General. It's called CAG, right? And then when CAG approves these numbers, they go forward, and then they are audited externally. Uh, Externally through IMF, through World Bank, through OECD, and so on and so forth, right? So a lot of to and fro happens, and then these numbers come. And no, they don't take duplicate transactions, obviously, because that's not GDP, what GDP means. And I also asked a question in that conversation, in that post, where I said, if it was so, if it was like you could just multiply GDP or grow GDP numbers by duplicating transactions, why would you not do it more than twice? Why would you just stop at two? If I could give $1,000 and you could give me $1,000 back, and we could have a GDP of $2,000 addition, why would we not keep doing this round tripping transaction and make our GDP bigger than China on paper? Right? Valid question, right? So it was a rhetorical question, which meant no, this is not how it happens. So Mr. Bhatia replied to my post. I'm honored and flattered. Mr. Bhatia actually replied to my post, and Mr. Bhatia said, in that post I had mentioned Mr. Bhatia should apologize for spreading this BS, and soon, and moving on, he must get some training before appearing on podcasts and interviews. Otherwise, all the credibility he's ever accrued will be gone forever. Not cool. Right? I was a bit harsh, I guess, which is characteristic of me. I apologize on that front, of course. But Mr. Bhatia said something very emotional. I apologize for spreading the uncomfortable truth. A country's GDP is irrelevant if its citizens are uneducated, unhealthy, or unhappy. Economic numbers mean little when they don't translate into human well being. That's what Mr. Bhatia said, and a lot of people are actually appreciating that as well. Now, I have a counter to this, which I didn't go in the comment section because I too much respect, right? You don't want to do that in front of, like, you don't want to have that kind of a confrontation or a discussion on comment section with somebody like Mr. Bhatia. But what do you mean by that? Like well-being, unhappy, unhealthy? That first of all, the conversation is how GDP is computed, calculated. It's not about whether Indian GDP is, you know, indicate has solved all problems. That's not what the conversation is. The conversation is how you think GDP is calculated, and whether that insinuation, or let's say that hypothesis, is correct. If that is the conversation, the answer is no. You were incorrect. You were factually, fundamentally wrong. To which I wrote, I mean, that's what I wrote in the reply. Namaste, sir. The point you just mentioned is irrefutable, and that's okay. But my point was that a person of your stature should be careful with fundamental facts. People like me have grown up drawing inspiration from people like you, someone like you. I'm sure you're aware about the impact your story has had on the Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem. If you say something like this, it has a serious amount of shock value. That said, all the love and respect to you is what I mentioned. Right? Now, this happened, and but my to answer Mr. Bhatia's statement that India economic numbers don't mean anything if somebody is unhappy, unhealthy. अब मेरी बीवी मुझे सताती है अगर, you know, तो GDP number can't do anything about it. Right? The GDP number won't make me happy अगर मेरी बीवी मुझे सताती है तो, which is not the case because I'm unmarried, just for record. या फिर अनहेल्दी. सो इफ मेरे को समोसे कचौड़ी खाने का बहुत शौक है और मैं अनहेल्दी हूँ, सो द GDP नंबर वोंट से एनीथिंग अबाउट दैट, राइट? बट does that mean that the GDP number has nothing to do with the economic uh, status of a country? No, that's wrong. GDP numbers do have a lot to do have a lot going on with the economic numbers. So a statement about this is called market is the a rising market is the tide that lifts all boats. Okay? A rising market is the tide that lifts all boats. You understand? When the market rises and it's lifting a lot of boats, it doesn't mean that all the boats will be lifted equally or all the boats will go as let's say the leading boat goes or the bigger ship goes or whatever. But a rising market lifts all boats. Now, how does this apply to a GDP calculation that we had, right? India just pulled out 140 million out of poverty in the last 10 years. 140 million. 140 million is 14 crore people have been pulled out of poverty in India, right? Per capita income of India has essentially, in the 90s, Indian per capita income was somewhere around 4,000, 10,000 rupees in the 1990s, and now it's 2.5 lakh rupees. Okay, so if you're looking at something from a very objective perspective, position, I mean, if you're not trying to make a political statement, then of course the GDP number means business, right? Of course the GDP number says something. Of course there's an economic inequality and there are a lot of problems with the country still, but that doesn't mean anything. What do you mean by economic numbers mean little when people are unhealthy, unhappy or whatever? What does that mean? मतलब दुखी है इंसान, उसकी बीवी उसे सताती है या वो समोसा कचौड़ी ज़्यादा खाता है और थोड़ा सा तोंद हो गई है उसकी. That doesn't mean anything, right? That's just hilarious. So uh, I hope that that bit is clear now. But it was nice interacting with Mr. Bhatia like that. These people have been our heroes, right? When I was in 1998, I was just like a 5-year-old, right? So, and then when you grew up, you learnt about, oh, somebody from India, Sabir Bhatia, had sold his company to Microsoft for $400 million in 1998. $400 million. In 1998, what was the forex? I'm assuming it was somewhere around 40 rupees. Dollar must be like 40 rupees, right? So in 1998, he had like 1,600 crore acquisition, and that internet pioneer, and that eventually became Microsoft Outlook. So there's a lot of pride attached to people like Mr. Sabir Bhatia, right? And he responding to my post was interesting. I've sent him a connection request. Let's see if he agrees to connect. I'll pitch him Seneca. Right? That'll be awesome if I pitch him Seneca. Anyway, so moving on to the next thing. Tilak Nagar Industries leads race to buy Imperial Blue. Imperial Blue, the iconic whiskey brand, I think, with the very very brilliant "Men Will Be Men" advertising campaign, is getting acquired. It's perhaps one of the top 10 whiskey brands in the world, top 8, I guess. and Tilak Nagar Industries is looking at buying it. Pernod Record. It's a record. It's a French company which owns this. It bought it from Diageo, I guess. Yeah, and it's looking at selling it because it's a $600 million deal in India. The brand has an estimated value of 600 million. A deal will mean the largest M&A in the history of liquor industry in India, more than a decade after Diageo buyout of United Spirits for 1.9 billion. In Brew Beverages and Tilak Ind are trying to buy Imperial Blue. Men will be men, and what they are looking at is something like a 600 million. Somebody, a London based Inbrew is also trying to buy, but I guess Pernod Record will be going with uh, Tilakend. Hello, Mr. Manish Kon- Kondhalkar. Sorry about mispronouncing your name, but so nice to meet you. I hope you're having fun with Thinker's Frequency. So Adani is looking at entering airport ground handling business. So Thinker's Frequencies viewers will know that we discussed something called airport handling business and how it's shaping, how it's looking uh, the society. I'm sorry, I read a comment and got distracted. So, airport handling business is going through a very big change due to the geopolitical situation of the country. So, Thinkers Frequency viewers will know that in after Operation Sindhur and India-Pakistan conflict, uh, a company called Celebi, which was a Turkish airport handling company, which had been doing this work in India for a long time, uh, its security clearance was cancelled. So Celebi went to court and everything is happening. That court battle is on. But as Celebi gets replaced, Adani is looking at the airport ground handling business, which is interesting because airport ground handling business is a steady cash flow generating operation. And if Adani looks at it, it might just be a very predictable kind of a business for the group. Interestingly, I had worked on a consulting project for Adani Airports. So I, uh, uh, you know, wrote the entire training module for Adani Airports. Not entire, of course, but some part of it. But it was a huge project for us. Something I had to do. So Tata Motors is lining up a three-pronged strategy. Once again, something Thinkers Frequency people will know. Tata had a 11% year-on-year decline as far as their shipments are concerned of Tata Motors, while Mahindra and Mahindra grew and while the market grew. So clearly not great times for Tata, but it's looking at bringing itself back in the game by launching Harrier, EV, and so on and so forth. So uh, that's interesting. Mr. Manish Kondhalkar is asking, "What is truth for you in philosophical ways?" Now that's a long conversation. Truth for me in philosophical ways. What is truth? I wrote a poem on it in 2018. Uh, वह नदी है या सागर है, वह है अपार या गागर है, गहरी है या है एक सूत, वो है भी या है केवल झूठ, इसके अर्थ अलग होंगे, केवल इस पर निर्भर होंगे, क्योंकि सत्य असल में सत्य नहीं, केवल एक चुनाव है, जो जीत गया सो जीत गया. सो सत्य असल में सत्य नहीं, केवल एक चुनाव है, जो जीत गया सो जीत गया. इनफैक्ट आई एम रीडिंग अ बुक called Chitralekha right now, which is a very beautiful book. Mr. Sarthak Verma would appreciate this because he was asking for a book recommendation. So Chitralekha has a line where it says, ना हम पुण्य करते हैं ना हम पाप करते हैं, हम केवल वह करते हैं जो हमें करना पड़ता है. So essentially the uh, truth and its absoluteness, it goes against that, right? Very beautiful. So that's what I think about truth. It's an election. There is no absolute truth. So FPI is cutting back after 2024 IPO binge. Inflows drop. That's okay. That's okay. That's not a big news, I guess. Uh, Indian CDS, Mr. Anil Chauhan, Thinkers Frequency, regular viewers will know that he really screwed it up for the Indian. I mean, it caused his statement, his interview with the Bloomberg led to a serious national embarrassment, right? It was a very, very difficult situation for India because he said it doesn't matter how many, uh, you know, jets were down. It matters why they were down. So it was like, why did you have to say that? In fact, Air Marshal, uh, sir said, had a much better response to that. He said, like, whatever I say, Operation Sindoor is still continuing, and whatever I say will only be advantage enemy, and I don't want to give advantage enemy. I'd rather say uh, nothing, and that will be good for us because whatever information I share, let's say I share, uh, Rafale went down, it's advantage enemy because now they know the fleet. I say it didn't go down, it's advantage enemy, now they can prepare better. That was a great response, but he screwed it up in an international forum, brought a lot of shame uh, to the entire narrative of this country. And now he's probably on a press tour. He's talking to students in Pune that Pak wanted to bring India to its knees in 48 hours but folded in 8 hours. And they called because they were, uh, they were in trouble and so on. But too little too late, sir. You literally ruined it. But moving on. Mr. Manish Kondhalkar says, read Atma Nam by Kapil Gupta. Great book. All right, sure. I'll have a look at it. Thanks. So, Vedanta is raising 5,000 crores via private placement of NCDs, convertible debentures. It's a debt. So, I really find it very interesting when companies just raise debt to finance their older debt. So that's what Vedanta is doing. Vedanta had a lot of people. For people who don't know, Vedanta is an Anil Agrawal group. It's into mining and it's into minerals. It's into a lot of things. It's a very, very big conglomerate. Mr. Anil Agrawal stays in UK, but it's a very, very big group, right? Vedanta. So they had a looming debt problem. Yeah, a huge debt problem. Because of that debt problem, Vedanta had to do a lot of things. They had to demerge their companies. They had to increase the dividend from their companies. So the how do you pay your debt back, right? It's a very interesting question. Now you have a company, and you have a great amount of debt on your book, and it's reaching repayment. What do you do to pay it back? So a way to pay it back is essentially you can use the cash accruals of a company and then pay it back. But you can't just unilaterally take the cash and go and pay the debt back, right? No. So what you do is you take dividends out of the income, and then you take dividend. But there's only so much dividends can do, right? And there's so much dividends you can take. So what Mr. Agrawal did was he raised the dividends. Then he tried to demerge the group and then raise independent money for those subsidiaries. And then he had to raise a lot of new debt to refinance the old debt, just like Shapurji Palanji Group did recently. As people might know, the regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency. So a lot of good things, a lot of interesting things as far as Vedanta is considered, but they are raising 5,000 crores to refinance some of the old debt, which is very interesting. Anyway, Maggie crisis amongst career's greatest challenges, says Nestle's MD, Mr. Narayan. But really, definitely great challenge for Maggie. Uh, Great challenge for Nestle, how Maggie panned out. In 2015, if you remember, Maggie was shot down by the food regulator for essentially for allegedly having more than permissible levels of lead. So they had a lot of lead, Maggie. And I wrote a joke on Facebook, I remember, that there should be unleaded Maggie in the market, just like unleaded petrol, right? But then Maggie's share went down. Then a lot of other players came up, Yippee and Patanjali noodles, and a lot of players. And then now the market is more or less back to where it was, but a lot of new players also have a share. So Mr. Narayanan said that it was career's greatest challenges. But to think of it, Team Nestle India handled it in the worst way possible. In the worst way possible. They just went silent, and they just let the crisis blow over, let competition prop up, and they didn't turn up. I mean, it would have been nice if the management of Maggie just came at the press conference, had Maggie while doing that press conference saying that we have full faith in the product, we don't know exactly what the findings are, and it could be problematic, but we will find our way, and we'll col- I mean, cooperate with the agencies and everything. But they didn't do that. They just went AWOL and let the crisis blow over. And since Maggie had such brand equity, it eventually bounced back. And then they were cleared of their charges and so on and so forth. But they handled it in the worst possible way. So, Mr. Narayanan talking about that challenges as a highlight of career is a bit weird. Colgate, HUL, Marico Bank on demand revival to turn around their fortunes. Normal monsoon tax relief to boost rural and urban consumption. As mentioned, uh, consumption is a huge problem as far as Indian growth story is considered. India is not consuming as much as we'd like, which is leading to some serious problems for players like HUL and like Marico. And HUL stock is a very good representative of that. So it's not gone well, right? HUL stock, if you guys look at it, it's been in the toilet for a long time. Let me take a look. HUL share price, and if I go 1 year, it's down 5% for 1 year, and 5 year it's 12% in 5 years. So it's essentially not moving at all, you know. And it had recently in 6 months it's down 4%, and so on. It's basically not moving anywhere. And if it's because it's earnings show, so HUL is basically hoping, because a company like HUL is the barometer of Indian consumption story, right? If people are not, if HUL is not being able to sell, means there's something wrong with the consumption story of the entire country. So they're hoping that something happens. Uh, let's see how the consumption story begins. People would know we discussed Subramanian Swami's 2018 book called Reset, where he mentioned how the economy is not going as well as planned because consumption is low, and it's leading to, if enough people don't consume, enough companies start going under. If companies start going under, people get fired. If people get fired, they consume even less, and so on and so forth. So it leads to what he called a tailspin. But that hasn't happened yet. 2018 was when the book came out, and right now we're reaching 2026. It's 8 years, hasn't happened. So let's see what happens now. India US discussed metal tariff objection. So as discussed, this is an ongoing story. A lot of stories you'll notice if you're regular with Thinkers Frequency, that the world runs on stories which don't just die one. There are stories which just are like fireflies, right? They happen and they vanish, right? But most stories are continuous. Stories keep developing, and they don't die. They just have cascading effects. They have related related aspects, which is very interesting. And people, when they ask me, hey, how do you do research, and how do you know so much about these things, it's because I follow a story, you know, and I don't leave that story in any way. So people who are watching, uh, if you also follow a story, you'll see how these things shape up, they develop, they flare, the problem flares up, it dies down, and then the story reaches its final conclusion. It takes a long time. So being regular helps a lot. So India and US discussed metal tariff. If you remember, US Donald Trump, Team Trump, has essentially, in a bid to save US steel manufacturing, a major campaign promise by Team Trump, they have been looking at a 25% or 50% tariff on Indian steel, and India uh, exports some $6 to $7 billion of steam and aluminium combined, some 5 billion of steel, 0.86 billion of aluminium, and so on. Now these people are trying to discuss, because then India will come up with its own retaliatory tariffs, and they don't happen. So it's a developing story where India and US are discussing metal tariff objection, right? EU FTA to be comprehensive, not interim. No agreements on geographical indications investment. I was surprised to see that India and French bilateral trade is just 15-16 billion dollars big. That was very, very surprising to me. I thought they would be like bigger partners, but no, it wasn't the case. India and France have a very small trading relationship, which they are trying to pick up. So let's see what happens. OECD, an organization I mentioned just a while ago while talking about the Mr. Sabir Bhatia case, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's, I guess, French, right? It's a French organization, OECD. Just one second, I'll let you know. Super thanks for the record, no problem. Uh, where is OECD from? Okay. Paris based organization. Yeah, it's French. So OECD has pegged FY26 Indian growth at 6.3%. 6.3%. It says inflation is easing, rate cuts are coming, global growth set to decline to 3.3%, but India will grow at 6.3%, which is awesome. Now, a lot of people say, why isn't India growing like China? And so on and so forth, Yes, HQ in Paris. Thank you for letting me know, confirming that, Mr. Verma. Really nice of you. So, a lot of people say, why isn't India growing like China? China grew like 20%, 10% on an average for so many years and straight. Why India is 6% is not enough? Somebody wrote in my comments that 6%, you didn't have to do anything to grow 6%. 6% is easy. And I'm like, if 6% is easy, why is no country growing at 6%? No major economy is growing at 6%. Why? The answer to the question, which says how China grew at such an astounding pace, if you look at the graph of India and China growth, in 1990, India's per capita income was greater than that of China. Did you know that? In 1990, that is 35 years ago, India and China were neck to neck, and India's per capita income was greater than China. But right now, India's per capita income is $2,500, $2,800, and China's is like 19,000 or 18,000, right? So if you look at China's growth years, 1990 it went into WTO, and it started becoming, the ground was laid for it to become a manufacturing powerhouse. But in 2007, in 2000s, there was a serious growth happening. In 2007 began the zero interest rate policy after the global meltdown, the Lehman Brothers crash. There was a zero interest rate policy, and from 2007 to the next 15 years till COVID, the zero interest rates stayed, right? So just imagine, I mean, you had zero interest rate, the global economy was taking a reboot, and everything was growing. So China grew on the back of everything growing at zero interest rate. Zero interest rate means that I can borrow money from you and the interest is zero, right? Which led to a lot of VCs propping up and investing good money into bad startups. So China had that advantage. But India doesn't have that advantage. India is looking at a declining global economy, global growth set to decline at 3.3% from 2.9. From 3.3, it's going to go to 2.9. So you can imagine conditions are different. Conditions are very different, and India will not be able to grow at 10% or 20% at all. It's just stupid to expect that. That said, companies and LLP incorporation surged in May over investor optimism. Registration of new companies increased 29% year on year, while LLPs saw 37% uptick. As many as 20,000 companies, including overseas entities, got incorporated in May. That's a very good thing for the country. More companies, uh, more economic activity. Hopefully, more consumption, though, right? That's very important. That's very important. Trade impact of US tariffs likely soon, says Alvaro Santos Pereira, chief economist, OECD. He says tariffs haven't hit yet. Why haven't tariffs hit yet? Because in anticipation of tariffs, there's been a lot of front loading of materials. So you remember those days, right, when we used to hear that petrol prices are gonna rise by a rupee tomorrow. So we used to stand in lines in petrol pump, huge lines, and get our tanks filled to the brim, right? Right before the rates change. Uh, it turns out countries operate in a same way. So when they knew that tariffs are going to apply, they front loaded a lot of material uh, so that consumer prices haven't hit yet, says Mr. Pereira from the chief economist from OECD. But I have another deeper insight on this. I say that the tariffs might not have that impact that people envision, because who knows what's happening with tariffs right now, right? Trump laid down tariffs, then EU agreed on a deal, tariffs were paused. Then EU didn't move forward with the deal, Trump said there will be tariffs. Then EU again came on board, he said tariffs. Trump laid tariffs on China, but China then China laid tariffs on Trump, I mean US. And then what happened was Trump agreed on a deal. They said that there's going to be a deal with China, so the tariffs were put off. Then China blocked a lot of rare earth minerals again for chip manufacturing in US, not EV manufacturing like in India, but they blocked the rare earth for chip manufacturing. Trump says we're going to go back with the tariffs, and then whatever tariff Team Trump was putting in, the international court of the court of international trade blocked those tariffs. So there's a court case on tariffs. So nobody knows exactly what's happening with tariffs. But Mr. Pereira says that there has been a significant change in trade policy, especially in the US. The average effective tariff of the US has risen from 2% to 15.5%, he says. But that's not true, because a lot of things are going back and forth, right? So you don't know. You don't know yet, is what I say. Will tap global know-how for maritime goods. Garden Reach shipbuilders and engineers to build India's first polar research vessel. Very good time for GRSE stock. Regular watchers of Thinkers Frequency will know that we've been killing it with our stock tips. Please don't, I'm just joking. It's not for stock tips. Thinkers Frequency is not for stock tips. I am not a stock expert. But having said that, one day I had said that Yes Bank stocks will have a good day today. Like Sumitomo's acquisition deal is going on, and on that day, just right after we finished, we go from 8 to 9. 9:15, Yes Bank rose like 10%. That's day before yesterday, I guess. One day I said Ola Electric's stock will go down because even though Goldman had a buy rating on the stock, as it's gonna go down, it went down 10%, and so on. So anyway, GRSE, great stock by the way, has been very volatile, a lot of opportunity of making money. So it's already up for a for some time, but it's saying that we will tap global know-how for maritime goods. It's going to build India's first polar research vehicle, because India's maritime vision 24/7, 2047, is saying that India needs to have a very, very huge maritime progress. And discussions have been held with countries that have expertise in maritime infrastructure development. Partnerships will be forged in line with 2047 goals. Global best practices. So India aims to ramp up cargo handling capacity of its ports fourfold to 10,000 million tons per annum by 2047. So right now it's 2,500 tons. India wants to ramp up its cargo handling capacity of ports to 10,000 by 2047. Among other goals, the Maritime India aims for a 400% increase in inland waterways cargo volumes. Inland waterways. Do people know about inland waterways? Inland waterways is just a magical, beautiful thing that I never thought India will be able to build. But India did, which is amazing, which is beautiful. Inland waterways is when we use our rivers for some shipments. So they actually had a trial shipment of something, or a shoe or something, from Agra down to Bengal or something, which was huge. So you skip the roads, you skip the traffic, the cost comes down to very low, and there's a new way. It's a new economy. Inland waterways could be a totally new economy for the entire market. I mean, it's a new frontier where cargoes and shipments are going through rivers. So it was making a lot of progress, by the way, the inland waterways thing, while India had a good relationship with Bangladesh, because Sheikh Hasina, Madam Sheikh Hasina, the erstwhile Prime Minister of Bangladesh, we were actually making a lot of progress in that. But now we have a hostile government in Bangladesh, so that project has come to a halt. Otherwise, the dream was to actually ship something from Agra and make it reach Bangladesh through the river flows and whatnot. It was amazing. But anyway, so amongst those goals, India has inland waterways which are going. So part of agreement between GRSE and Kongsberg, the domestic shipment builder sector is expected to receive design expertise for developing the PRV, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, man. You know, good time for all the maritime, but not really. It's very complicated. Please don't send me to SEBI and have me arrested or something. I'm not giving stock tips. Anyway, so why Pernod Ricard is essentially looking at selling is because they want a higher markup brand. Well, you got to appreciate the advertising prowess, right? The man who must have come up with that "Men Will Be Men" campaign, great agency work. Let's see which agency came out with "Men Will Be Men." Which agency came out with "Men Will Be Men" campaign? "Men Will Be Men" campaign was for Seagram's Imperial, was created by Ogilvy and Mather. Ogilvy and Mather. That's cool, right? Ogilvy and Mather are the leading players in the Indian advertising space, so no surprise there. But India Imperial Blue ranks as 8th best-selling whiskey in the world, and some interesting facts is Imperial Blue was introduced in India by Canadian distillers Seagram in 97. In 2001, Seagram sold its global business to Pernod Ricard. The Canadians sold to Pernod Ricard. The French company then took over the Indian business. In 2002, Pernod Ricard relaunched Imperial Blue with advertising slogan "Men Will Be Men." So 2 is when Ogilvy Mather changed the brand. Its success grew. Memorable advertising line. Selling Imperial Blue marks a change in focus for Pernod Ricard. It aims to grow premium brands like Glenlivet, Jameson, and Chivas Regal, it says. So, what I was saying, they want to Ogilvy, the usual suspect. You're right, Mr. Verma. You're right. I thought it could be anybody. Like these advertising guys, they're awesome. right? They had a very good run. There's a show, of course, Mad Men is in the US, but in India there was a show called Thinkistan, which traced the advertising journey in the 90s of India. So Thinkistan was like Mad Men, but in India. Beautiful show. Naveen Kasturia from TVF, Pictures, Aspirants. He was the lead. And they just did extremely nice work. Very underrated, that show. Somehow it has not reached people. Perhaps because it was intelligent. So limited market. It was deep. Uh, you know. But something I would heavily recommend. Earnings upgrades lift markets. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, Yes Bank to raise 16,000 crores via equity and debt route. So the Sumitomo thing is happening, and Carlyle has sold its shares, and new people are buying it. Bold has cleared to raise debt via instruments dominated in Indian foreign currency, 8,500 crores. To support its strategic agreement with Japan, Sumitomo, the bank will amend its article of association, and approval to raise fresh equity will enable SMBC to infuse new capital. Sumitomo has signed a definitive agreement to acquire 20% stake in Yes Bank, and then it's gonna buy the next 14%. So perhaps another good day for Yes Bank, stock wise. Oh, let's see. Let's see. We'll end this at 9, you know, and 9:15 the market opens. So see, let's see what happens. Tata strengthens its Asia network with new subsea infra. Subsea infra is something very interesting and fascinating, man. It takes so much money, but Tata is a great player, and it's looking at cables connecting Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan, complementing the existing TG and IA cable system. So it's another frontier for Tata. Not very surprising though. Dixon awaits government not to make displays for sub 15,000 phones jointly with HKC. So a lot of very serious, interesting thing is happening in the smartphone manufacturing world. Smartphone manufacturing world is seeing something which is frankly pretty bizarre, right? So Chinese companies which have manufacturing in India, they are looking at outsourcing manufacturing to contract manufacturers based out of India. So people from Chinese company who actually set up big units in India are not using those units. They have a lot of unutilized capacity in those units, and instead they are using, uh, you know, contract manufacturers like Dixon and other people. This is very interesting. This doesn't happen. Because why would a company, these people are claiming that they are doing this because uh, to save cost, there's a lot of money which goes into manufacturing and so on and so forth, and it gives them a lot of freedom. But why then set up a unit? You know, if you've set up a unit, you might just utilize it. If you're not utilizing the unit and instead contracting your phones out to third party manufacturers, it's just very interesting. Speaking of things that don't happen, banks are parking money with mutual funds. So banks have a business model where they take deposits and lend money, and whatever they make in the middle is their earning, right? So deposit rate is 5%, let's say. Lending rate is 10%. So that's how you deposit 100 rupees, you lend 100 rupees, you get 20 back, you give 10 to the depositor, 10 rupees is your learning. But right now what's happening with banks is they have excess capital. Just a few months ago, 6 months, a year ago, banks were struggling with capital uh, uh, adequacy. They were getting really short on capital, which was turning the emergency alarms off. But now they have the opposite problem. It's temporary, but the problem is that they have a lot of capital. So they're putting that capital in mutual funds instead of lending that. Very interesting. Wish some of that money falls on us, right? So, crisis at Good Glam Group delays salaries once again. So, Good Glam Group is delaying salaries. Good Glam Group is probably going to die, which says a lot about how the VCs worked yet again. VCs, the usual suspects, as Mr. Sarthak Verma said, They just proved their inadequacy, intellectual inadequacy, by following the herd when it came to the house of brands business. So Thrasio worked in US. If in fact it didn't even work in US, it just raised a lot of money in US, which somehow convinced Indian VCs to invest in Thrasio clones in India. So Mensa Brands, Good Glam Group, First Cry had a Global Bees unit, and everybody started popping up. Like billions of dollars started going to House of Brands business. Nobody knows why. Nobody, all these morons at VC companies. Nobody thought like, whoa, this is not cool. Credit where it's due. Not all VCs are alike, of course. Mr. Sanjeev Bichandani and InfoEdge, they didn't invest in any House of Brands play. So they kept their uh, individuality intact by not being part of the herd, which sort of proved their metal. You know, Mr. Sarthak Verma says Thrasio went under the bus recently. Only Mensa has survived, I believe, in India. Nobody has actually survived. Everybody is struggling. It's just how long that painful struggle period goes on, right? And when does the whistle eventually go off? So, Good Glam Group is not paying salary. And interestingly, it just paid its ventures back. So, it acquired Scoop Whoop, it sold Scoop Whoop. It acquired Serona brand. It just sold Serona back to the founders. So founders probably sold Serona for 450 crores and then bought it back after 3 years for 150 crores. So that's the kind of business that these people excel. They raised a lot of money, started buying businesses, and just 3 years later they started selling those businesses at like 60% haircut. You know, genius VCs. India AI empanelment drives down GPUs in second round. Costco. India is trying its best to make GPUs available for the booming AI industry, but let's see what happens. India's top IT exporters buck the trend to land multi-year deals. Well, this is just noise. In the long term, I think India's IT will be in a lot of strain because it's not going to be easy. The news says that they've been able to land some deals, multi-year deals, but I guess it's only respite for a very small period of time. Four of India's responsible AI solutions to go live in September. I just hope Indian AI can catch up because how Servam did is very demoralizing, and so is the case with Krutrim. So
Laid down tariffs.
I just
Then
hope.
EU agreed.
I'm sorry. For the. Okay. As we discussed, Indian travel industry is going huge, apparently. Travel and tourism to contribute to record breaking 22 lakh crore to the economy. 22 lakh crore. Can somebody do the math? How much is it in dollars? Uh, you know, 22 lakh crores. 1 lakh crores is 12 to 14 billion dollars. 10 lakh crores is 120 to 140 billion dollars. 20 lakh crores should be uh, 280 billion dollars. 22 lakh, 300 billion dollars. So 22 lakh crores. Travel and tourism gave 22 lakh crore to the economy in 2025, and which is 300 billion dollars. I didn't think it was that much because Indian IT industry is 250 billion dollars. So Indian travel is 22 billion dollars and 300 billion dollars with 48 million people employed. 48 million people. That's 50 million. 10 million is 1 million. 10 lakh. 48. 50 million people is. How much is 50 million people? 5 crore. Right? 5 million will be 50 lakh. 50 million will be 5 crore people. Yeah, 5 crore people essentially. So essentially, Mr. Sarthak Verma says, so essentially VCs were paying startups to become PEs for smaller firms. Yeah. Oh man, I mean, it's just unbelievable as it has been for a long time. But anyway, so Indian travel industry, which travel and tourism market has really surprised me because I didn't think it was bigger than the Indian IT services industry, which is $250 billion. And very interestingly, international visitor spending is at 3.2 lakh crores. 3.2 lakh crores. That's roughly $45 billion. That's huge. That's huge. That's very interesting. 8 to 9% of GDP. Correct. Correct, sir. Absolutely. So 8 to 9% of GDP sounds bizarre, right? For travel. I thought it was like 3 to 4% of GDP, right? But 8 to 9% of GDP is just huge. Anyway, uh, there's a lot of war which is happening as far as uh, Russia, and there's no respite for it from it apparently. Eurozone CPI, Eurozone inflation, entire Euro's inflation is going down 1.9%. Low energy. So this means that Euro is gonna cut rates, which means that the world might just have a little better chance at growing again, which means it could be a good news for India, right? So with that said, Microsoft has fired 300 people, prioritizes AI. Well, that was supposed to happen. Okay. Yeah, so Chinese mobile companies making more in India to dim regulatory glare. So it has a lot to do with regulations. Some good insights on the smartphone market. Uh, it says Dixon Technologies chief says India's smartphone market to be around 150 million pieces a year. 150 million pieces. 150 million. Again, I'm bad with zeros, but 150 million is 15 crore. So India essentially sells 15 crore smartphones every year, and out of that 150 million, Android is 135 to 140 million. So out of the 15 crore phones, 14 crores, 13 to 14 crore phones are Android. Okay, only 10 crore phones are iPhone. And various brands are manufactured, and the outsourcing opportunity is around 90 million. That means 9 crore is the outsourced play. Out of the 140 million Android phones, 50 million are essentially being manufactured in-house. So the very interesting thing is Dixon made 28 million phones. Its projection is 43 to 44 million phones. Dixon is killing it. And very interestingly, the brands uh, like Vivo and everybody, they have a lot of unused capacities. For Chinese company, there seems to be an informal diktat by the government encouraging them to have some part of their volumes manufactured by Indian players. So India is basically informally telling them to back off a little as far as manufacturing is concerned. Uh, Samsung, Oppo, and Vivo each have around 60 million units of capacity in India, where their sales are just 20 to 25 million, as we discussed, right? So they have a lot of unused capacity. 60 million phones they can manufacture, but they're only manufacturing 2025, and then they're saying that we'll let Indian contract manufacturers take the bait. Indian students are looking beyond the big four to study abroad, of course. So Indian students used to go to US, Canada, and Australia. This was the 50% play. No, it was the 80% play essentially. Yeah, 85%. So 2 years ago, uh, the top four countries were attracting 85%, but with all the hassle that's happening, it's come down to 50%. And now people are looking at other countries like South Korea, Japan, and so on and so forth. Germany, France. Study abroad is rapidly changing. Real estate crisis in Canada, Howard Trump. Many students are preferring Germany, France, Ireland, and so on. Japan, Dubai. The big four was US, UK, Canada, and Australia, and now it's coming down to 50% from 85%. Most Indian companies value succession, only a few chart out formal plans. Regular listeners of Thinkers Frequency will know that succession planning is very hard. I recommended a book called Four Brothers and a Revolution That Shaped a Country, the biography of Brijmohan Lal Munjal, sir, from Hero Group. Now that book talked about how complicated it becomes to have a succession plan, and even though they led the succession planning as an example, by example, but even Hero Group has a lot of conflicts. I talked about this in the previous episode of Thinkers Frequency, where Hero Electric was founded by another company, another family unit, but then Hero Motorcorp entered the Hero Electric business despite the constitution of the family saying that you can't do that. But it's very complicated. So with that, we have come to the end of Thinkers Frequencies episode number 10. I hope we've covered a lot. If you followed the episode, there was a lot of insights. It was a lot of fun. It's a regular, if you do it regularly, it's just very, very valuable, right? It's just very valuable. Right now, just one thing I want to say. I just read this article. It's very nice. A close look at Banksy. Banksy is an anonymous artist in UK who does a lot of graffiti. And his latest love letter says, I want to be what you saw in me. I want to be what you saw in me. Right. Nice. Nice, I guess. With that, I'll say bye-bye to all of you. Thank you for joining Thinkers Frequency. Insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis. Have a beautiful day at work. See you tomorrow.